The moment I told my partner I'd been fired, he didn't even pause. No concern, no surprise, just raw, seething anger. "Of course you got fired," he snapped, slamming his tablet shut. "You've always thought you were smarter than everyone else. Maybe now you'll learn your place." I stood there, still in my office attire, clutching my bag straps like they were anchoring me to the floor. I'd played this moment out in my mind countless times. Pictured him wrapping me in a hug, promising we'd face it together. But this wasn't that moment. This wasn't that man. The truth? I hadn't been fired. I'd been promoted suddenly, joyfully, after years of quiet, relentless work. Walking home that evening in Seattle, mulling over how Ethan had grown distant, distracted, I felt a flicker of doubt. What if he couldn't handle my success? What if he resented me for out-earning him? He'd been raised in a family where the man was the pillar, the provider, as his mother would say, her words lingering in our apartment like a dated sermon. Still, I didn't expect the outburst. He glared at me like I was a burden he'd just noticed. "Do you even realize the mess you've put us in? How are we supposed to cover the rent now?" he shouted, pacing the living room, never once asking how I felt or what happened. I stayed silent, not out of weakness, but because my throat locked up, my body sensing I needed to hold back. And maybe that was for the best. If I told him the truth that I'd been promoted, that I'd be earning more than ever, I'd have missed what followed. I'd have missed the fractures in our life that were finally breaking open. Instead, I stood there as he ranted, claiming I'd never contributed anything meaningful, that I just pushed papers while he built things that mattered. The rest of that evening is a blur. I think I locked myself in the bathroom, stood under the shower for 30 minutes, the hot water burning my skin as if it could erase the shame, the confusion, the fear. That night, he slept on the couch without a word. In our bed, I stared at the ceiling, my mind racing. There had been signs, I realized. Signs I'd ignored for far too long. The late nights at the office, the secretive glances at his phone, the way he stopped looking me in the eye when we talked. And now this. His utter lack of compassion, his coldness. It wasn't just about the lie anymore. Something deeper was at play, something darker, and I felt it stirring under my skin, the instinct to survive, to uncover the truth before it consumed me. Looking back, the signs were there long before I mentioned being fired. They weren't blatant at first, just small things. Ethan coming home later each night, always with a vague excuse. His phone, once left carelessly on the counter, now always face down, locked tight. Or how he'd started skipping our Sunday brunches, a ritual we'd kept for years, with nothing but a shrug and a maybe next week. I told myself it was stress. His architectural firm had landed a huge waterfront project. He was working harder than ever. I wanted to believe that, because the alternative, that the man I'd shared a home with for a decade was drifting away, was too painful to face. But one moment stuck with me, replaying endlessly in my head. It happened 2 months before I tested him. I'd left work early one Friday after my team finished a campaign ahead of schedule. I thought I'd surprise Ethan, cook his favorite meal, open a bottle of wine, reclaim a piece of us I'd been missing. I slipped into the apartment quietly, expecting to find him sketching in the living room. Instead, I heard his voice from the bedroom. He was on the phone, speaking in a tone I didn't recognize. Serious, guarded, almost scripted. "No, she doesn't know anything yet," he said, followed by a long pause. "We just need a bit more time." Then he laughed, not the warm, familiar laugh I loved, but something cold, distant, almost cruel. I stood frozen in the hallway, gripping the doorframe, my pulse pounding in my ears. He was talking about me. I was sure of it. I couldn't hear the other voice. Maybe it was on speaker, maybe not. But the weight of his words settled on me like a stone. I couldn't move. I couldn't breathe. Then, as if nothing had happened, he stepped out of the bedroom, saw me, and smiled, kissing my cheek like it was any other day. I smiled back, went to the kitchen, started cooking, but something inside me broke that evening. A silent fracture, hidden but spreading fast. From that day, I watched him differently, listened more closely, noticed the subtle shifts, how he dodged talk of the future, grew irritated when I asked about his day, the small lies he didn't realize I'd caught. I wasn't paranoid. My instincts were screaming, and I was finally listening. It was a strange grief, mourning something while pretending it was still alive. I told myself to wait, to gather more clues, to be certain, until that moment after my fake firing, when the last of my illusions shattered. That's when I knew something bigger was happening, something I hadn't yet grasped, but I was about to find out, and there'd be no turning back. It was mid-afternoon when I heard the front door open. I had stayed home from work claiming I was sick. Really, I needed time to think. Ethan thought I was jobless, broken, scared. He had no idea I was still working, no idea I'd been promoted, no idea I was piecing myself together. Quietly, I froze when I heard two voices enter the apartment. The second wasn't a colleague or friend, it was Margaret, my mother-in-law. I slipped into the hallway, standing just behind the guest room door. I knew I shouldn't eavesdrop, but their casual tone on a weekday afternoon made my skin crawl. So, Margaret's voice cut through, sharp and familiar. Why the sudden visit? Everything okay? It's going exactly as we planned, Ethan replied, almost smug. She told me she got fired yesterday, completely crushed, just like you said. I covered my mouth, stifling a gasp. Finally, Margaret said, her voice dripping with satisfaction. She'll have no choice now. She'll have to agree to our terms. My knees wobbled. I leaned against the wall, heart pounding so loud I could barely hear what came next. She's totally dependent on me now, Ethan continued. Selling the apartment is just a matter of time. Margaret gave a smug chuckle. See, I told you that woman wasn't right for you, Margaret said. Too driven, too independent. You think she'd stay with you if it weren't for your father's apartment? It felt like a punch to the gut. That apartment was our home for 10 years. I'd poured my time, money, and heart into it. Don't start, Mom, Ethan sighed. We've been over this. And what about Sarah? Margaret pressed. When will you tell her it's time? Sarah. The name hit me like a bucket of ice water. Sarah Thompson, Jacob's girlfriend before his accident. Jacob, Ethan's older brother, died in a crash 3 years ago. Sarah had vanished after the funeral. I had no idea Ethan was in touch with her, let alone. She's ready, Ethan said, his voice softening. The baby's doing great. Sarah says he's growing fast, looks just like Jacob. My stomach churned. I'll adopt him once the divorce is final, Ethan went on like it was a business deal. He'll be my son. Our son. I couldn't breathe. Margaret cooed. Just think how thrilled Sarah will be when she hears the apartment's for sale. She's waited so long. My ears rang, my vision blurred. This wasn't just betrayal, it was a calculated replacement. They weren't just leaving me, they were erasing me. And the worst part? I didn't know how long this had been going on. How many smiles, how many kisses had been lies. My partner wasn't just cheating, he was scheming. I always knew Sarah was the one for you, Margaret said, her voice syrupy with approval. You two are perfect together. It's a shame you met her too late after marrying that one. That one. Not Anna. Not your partner. Just that one. A placeholder. An obstacle. I bit my knuckle to stay silent. My body shook, but I couldn't stop listening. I had to hear it all. Let's not get ahead of ourselves, Ethan muttered. We still need to make sure Anna doesn't fight the divorce. She won't, Margaret said confidently. Not if you play it right. Remind her she's got nothing, no job, no savings. She'll fold. My fists clenched, every nerve screaming. They thought I was helpless, trapped, but I wasn't. Not yet. And if she doesn't fold? Margaret asked. What if she gets a lawyer? Ethan's voice dropped, too calm. Then we hit her with the infidelity angle. I nearly stumbled back. What infidelity? Margaret asked. Doesn't matter, Ethan said. I've got some old photos from that conference she went to 2 years ago. Just her with coworkers, but they can be spun the right way. Enough to plant doubt. You're clever, Margaret purred, just like your father. But he wasn't done. If that fails, Ethan added, we accuse her of leaking company data. She worked with sensitive files, brought them home sometimes. I'll say I caught her trying to sell secrets to competitors. My knees gave out and I sank to the floor, hands ice cold. My partner, the man who held my hair when I was sick, who painted our walls while I chose the colors, was planning to ruin me. He'd lie in court, accuse me of crimes I didn't commit just to push me out. For Sarah. And a child that wasn't his. Sarah. The quiet, delicate woman I vaguely recalled from Jacob's memorial. She'd seemed kind, fragile. I never imagined she'd re-enter our lives like this, as the woman replacing me, the mother of the child my partner wanted to claim. How's the baby doing? Ethan asked, his voice light, almost happy. Strong, Margaret replied proudly. Sarah says he's growing fast. Looks just like Jacob. Same eyes, same laugh. You'll see soon enough. The room spun. They were building a new family. Ethan, Sarah, the baby, and Margaret. Always Margaret. In their minds, I was already gone. Just paperwork. Just one final talk. I'll tell her tonight, Ethan said. She's already shaken from losing her job. It's the perfect time. I'll play the sympathetic card, say it's better for both of us, offer her some cash to walk away. Margaret snorted. Push the pity. Make her feel like a burden. She'll cave. Women like her always do. I bit my lip until it bled, but through the pain, I smiled faintly. They didn't know I hadn't been fired. I'd been promoted. Their plan was already unraveling. I stayed crouched behind the door long after they stopped talking, unmoving as the couch creaked and the front door closed behind Margaret. I sat there, hugging my knees, heart pounding so loud I thought it'd betray me. My body was frozen, but my mind was ablaze. This wasn't just betrayal, it was war. And I'd walked into it unprepared, unaware until now. But I wouldn't be a victim. Not quietly. Not ever. That night, I didn't speak to Ethan. He acted like nothing had happened, poured a drink, watched a game, glanced at me with a neutral expression that now felt grotesque. I avoided his gaze, afraid I'd shatter the illusion. And I needed that illusion. For now. In bed, I lay still, eyes open, back to him. He fell asleep quickly, as always, like plotting my erasure didn't weigh on him. I listened to his breathing and planned. Before sunrise, I left the apartment. Not for work, not yet. I went to the storage closet where we kept old files, warranties, receipts, contracts, tax records. I needed proof I'd contributed to that apartment, that I'd invested my own money, not just my presence. The new furnace, my bonus paid for it. The custom bookshelves in the study, my design, my deposit. I gathered bank statements, invoices, furniture receipts, packed them into a box, then a bag, and drove to the only person I trusted, Lauren. Lauren Carter wasn't just a coworker. She was my friend. For years, we'd been each other's lifeline during late nights at the agency. She knew my tea order, my birthday, the time I tried to adopt a stray dog and failed spectacularly. Most importantly, she'd never betrayed me, not even with office gossip. That made her invaluable now. When I arrived at her door, she didn't pry. She just looked at me, then stepped aside. I need a favor, I whispered. Say no more, she replied. In her kitchen, I spread the documents on her table. If anything happens, if I disappear, if I stop answering, give this to my lawyer. She raised an eyebrow but stayed silent. I'm not paranoid, I added, seeing her concern, but I can't take risks. Lauren nodded. You're scaring me, but okay, whatever you need. I exhaled, the knot in my chest loosening slightly. I hadn't told her everything, not about Sarah, the baby, the betrayal, but she knew enough. That something was wrong, that I needed her, and for now, that was enough. Driving home, I passed the waterfront where Ethan and I used to walk on weekends. I remembered how he'd hold my hand, look at me like I was his world. That man was gone. The one waiting at home was a stranger in familiar skin, and tonight, that stranger would sit me down, look me in the eye, and ask me to vanish. He had no idea I was already planning to make sure he lost everything. When I walked through the door that evening, I knew it was coming. The performance. He had rehearsed it, I could see it in his face, the forced concern, the artificial slump in his shoulders. Ethan Moore was about to play the good guy in his own betrayal. Hey, he said, voice low, careful. We should talk. I gave him a weary smile, just enough to seem broken, to keep him confident. Sure, I replied, setting my bag by the door. What's up? He gestured to the living room, staged like a scene from a drama. Dimmed lights, 2 glasses of wine on the coffee table, a blanket draped over the couch arm, like this was a gentle, mutual discussion. Like he was doing me a kindness by dismantling my life softly. I sat. He took the armchair across from me, hands clasped, letting out a sigh so rehearsed I nearly laughed. Anna, he began, I've been thinking a lot about us, about where we're at. And I think we've drifted apart. I kept my eyes on the wine glass, nodding faintly. Okay. I don't want this to be messy, he continued, leaning forward. No lawyers, no courts. I just think it's time we admit this relationship isn't working. He sounded heartbroken, like he was the victim, like this was tearing him apart. I mean, with you out of work now, he added softly, maybe this is a good time for a fresh start, for both of us. My stomach twisted. I let my lip quiver slightly. Are you saying we're done? He nodded, sipping his wine like he'd earned it. Yeah, but amicable, civil. I don't want to fight. I'm willing to help you get settled. You'll need a place, obviously, and some money to start over. I tilted my head, playing fragile. You'd do that for me. Of course, he said, hand on his chest like a saint. I care about you, Anna. I just don't think we're right for each other anymore. We've changed. He paused for effect, then added, And the apartment, it's legally mine, left to me by my dad. But I want to be fair. I'll give you a settlement, something to cover rent for a few months. I blinked, let out a shaky breath. How much? He named a number. It was pathetic, a fraction of what I'd invested in our home, but I didn't react. I stared at him, like I was seeing him anew. I just thought we'd try harder, I whispered. I thought we were stronger. Ethan reached out, touched my hand like an actor tired of his role. I'm sorry, but this is the best way forward. I promise I gave him what he wanted, nodded slowly, eyes misty, lips tight in defeat. Okay, I said. I'll think about it. He exhaled, relieved. But behind my silence, behind the trembling breath and damp eyes, I was building my case. He didn't want lawyers, but I was about to hire the best in Seattle. The next morning, I left before Ethan woke. He was still sprawled on couch, buried under a blanket like a kid dodging consequences. No note, no explanation, just silence. Let him wonder. Downtown Seattle was stirring as I entered the old stone building where Jessica Lane's office sat between a bakery and a bookkeeping firm. The hallway smelled of fresh bread and paper. I waited 10 minutes that felt like forever, rehearsing my words. When Jessica called my name, I walked in and told her everything. Not everything, not Sarah, the baby, or the betrayal that cracked my voice, but enough for a lawyer to see the battlefield. The inherited apartment, the years of shared expenses, the receipts, bank statements, his push for a quick, quiet split with an insulting offer. Jessica listened, her face calm, analytical, her pen gliding over a notepad like it was made for this fight. You've been together 10 years? She asked, precise. 12, I corrected. 10 officially, 2 before that. She nodded, jotting it down. Any kids? No. Proof of contributions to the home? Receipts, invoices, statements, furniture, renovations, fixtures, everything. She leaned back, hands folded. Anna, you have a strong case. But understand, if we proceed, there's no going back. It'll get ugly. He'll fight dirty. I met her gaze. He already is. Her expression didn't shift, but something in her eyes did. Respect, maybe. Then let's get to work. When I stepped outside, the air felt lighter, crisper. The road ahead was steep, but the weight on my chest had lifted. I wasn't lost in the dark anymore. I had an ally who saw the pieces and knew how to play them. I went straight to the office after. No more hiding. I walked in, head high, greeted my team, sat at my desk, and opened the department dashboard like nothing had changed. Ethan thought I was jobless, fragile, but I was back, fully. My phone buzzed at lunch. A text from him. Hope your interviews went well. Let me know when you're ready to talk next steps. I nearly laughed. Next steps. He had no idea I'd already taken them. I replied, will do. That afternoon, I met with my team, reviewed goals, scheduled meetings, and approved a new client pitch. I was sharp, focused, unbreakable. At sunset, leaving the office, I knew I'd changed permanently. The woman who cried in the hallway, who trembled in silence as her partner plotted her erasure, she was gone. In her place was someone stronger, sharper, ready. He wanted me to vanish quietly, but I was preparing to take everything back on my terms. Ethan was waiting when I got home, leaning against the kitchen counter, arms crossed, trying to look calm. But the twitch in his jaw, the slight shift in his stance, betrayed his nerves. Hey, he said, casual like we were discussing takeout. Got a minute? I hung my coat slowly, turned to face him. Sure. He nodded toward the living room. Same setup as before, couch, wine, blanket, the same rehearsed scene. He thought I'd bought his first act. I've been thinking, he started, I want to finalize things soon. The split, the paperwork, get it settled so we can move on. I nodded, keeping my face soft. Okay. He blinked. So, you agree? I'm not fighting the split, I said gently, but I want to understand what's fair. So I've talked to someone. He froze. Someone? A lawyer. His eyes narrowed. Why would you need a lawyer? I'm offering a fair deal. We can handle this ourselves. I tilted my head. You said the apartment's legally yours, right? It is, he said quickly. But we've lived there 10 years. I've put money in. I have receipts. I just want fairness. He laughed, sharp, defensive. Anna, you're blowing this out of proportion. You lived here. That's not owning it. I paid for the study remodel, I said softly. The bathroom fixtures, the appliances, from my accounts, I want that recognized. Ethan stood, pacing. I don't want this to get ugly. Then don't insult me with a number that barely covers 3 months' rent. He turned, and the mask slipped anger, panic. You're being unreasonable. No, I said calmly. I'm being smart. You taught me that, remember? Plan ahead. Protect your assets. He ran a hand through his hair, eyes darting. You really want to do this? Lawyers? You think that's smart? I think it's necessary, I replied. You wanted fairness? This is how it works. He didn't respond right away, just stared, recalculating, reframing me. I wasn't the broken partner he'd expected. I was a problem now. So what do you want? He muttered. Half the apartment? Not half, I said. Just what I put in, and maybe a bit more for the time you wasted lying to me. His jaw tightened. He didn't deny it, and in that silence, I knew he was finally scared. He thought I'd crumble. He didn't expect me to sharpen. The split finalized 6 weeks later, not quietly, not quickly. Ethan stalled once he realized I wouldn't roll over. His lawyer, probably the smug friend he'd boasted about to Margaret, tried every tactic. But Jessica was sharper, relentless. She had every receipt, every transfer, every signature I'd made on that apartment. We didn't chase more than what was fair, but we ensured Ethan couldn't keep what wasn't his. I walked away with a solid settlement and full recognition of my contributions. Not just financial, but as a partner who'd built a home before he tore it down. The last time I saw him, we were signing papers in a stark conference room downtown. Sarah wasn't there, but I felt her presence behind him, quiet, waiting to step in once I was gone. Ethan didn't meet my eyes, not once. When it was done, I stood, tucked the pen in my bag, and said, "You always underestimated me." He didn't reply. He didn't need to. I saw it in his face, regret or maybe just shock that his script for me didn't end as planned. I moved into a modest apartment overlooking the Sound. Not grand, not spacious, but mine. The first night, I left every light on, not from fear, but because I could. No one to call me dramatic, no one to label me a burden, just silence, peaceful, earned. Word spread that Sarah and Ethan were struggling. Their idyllic vision wasn't so simple. Raising a child wasn't just smiles and photos. Margaret tried to manage it, as always, but I heard through Lauren that tensions were rising, money tighter than expected, Sarah not quite fitting Margaret's mold. It didn't surprise me. Their life was built on lies, and lies don't hold up long. I don't dwell on them. I don't scroll their profiles or stew in bitterness. I've rebuilt slowly, deliberately. My job is solid, my name respected. Some nights I eat alone, but I've learned solitude isn't loneliness, it's healing. I've started kickboxing on Saturdays, rediscovered poetry, call my brother more. I've even begun writing again, something I hadn't done since college. Pieces of me I thought were lost were just buried under years of shrinking for someone else's ego. Now, I take up all the space I need. If I've learned anything, it's this. Being underestimated is a dangerous gift. When you rise, when you fight back, no one sees it coming. Ethan thought I'd break. Instead, I became unbreakable.